quite delayed. Welcome everybody. Today's guest is Rabbi Gluckowsky. Rabbi Gluckowsky is the member of the Rabbinical Council of Rechovot. He's also the Chabad rabbi in the city of Rechovot. And he's graced our visit this week in commemoration of Gimmel Tammuz. And Rabbi Gluckowsky today will discuss keeping the focus while being in a clouded world. Rabbi Mendel Gluckowsky.
It's nice to visit. This is my third time here in Australia, so I have now a chazaka. I'm enjoying very much. It's nice to see in the middle of the day, in the hoo-ha. We say that's the milah of Tfilas Mincha. Because Mincha is the shortest prayer. But Eliyahu was Mendel at Tfilas Mincha. Eliyahu was, when he davened the story with the Nevi Abal, it was Tfilas Mincha. It says because Tfilas Mincha is the most precious tefillah, even though it's the shortest, it's in the middle of the day. In the morning you get up, before you start working you have chakras. At night, after you finish working, you have minor, but sometimes Mincha is in the middle of the day. You have to tear yourself away from everything what you're doing. You have to talk to Hashem. So the minor of Mincha is a tremendous thing. It's also a shear in the middle of the day. Prayer in the middle of the day is a tremendous, has value, much more of an echus, much more of a qualitative value. The previous Rebbe was once walking in the somewhere in the Alps. If it was in Switzerland or another area where the Alps are, he was once walking with his son-in-law, and it was high up on a mountain, and the clouds had fallen into the valley from where they were standing, and his son-in-law, Rabbi Gluckowsky, pointed to it was very beautiful scene. He pointed out to the Rebbe, look at that, it was very nice. They're standing on top of the mountain over there. You see the clouds in the valley. And the Rebbe looked at the scene, and he said to his son-in-law, that's the way it should be. We should always be able to be above the clouds so that we should be able to see clear. Because when you're in the clouds, you don't necessarily see clear. Things are misty. So we should always try to be a little bit above the clouds so that we should be able to have more clarity and more to see. Of course, if we must say, the thing that helps us the most to be able to be a little bit above the clouds, that we should be able to see straight, the more learning that we do, the more the Torah classes that we have, the more the learning that we do, the Torah, it says is one step above the world. When a person learns Torah, so that's one of the things that helps him, is able to have a different kind of perspective to life than just actual what's going on in the world. It lifts him up above, a little bit above all. So the one of the ways of us being able to keep focused on the correct values of life and what should be doing is the more learning that one does. Like it says right after the giving of the Torah on Shavuos, usually every year the parsha that we read of the week is Parshas Nosi Esrosh B'nei Gershon. Usually that's what we read after Shavuos. There are times, once in a while, the Parshas Nosi is read right before Shavuos, but usually it's read right after Shavuos. And one of the reasons the commentators say, because the parsha begins with the word Nosoi Esrosh, lift up your head. After the giving of the Torah, it's to show us that when a person learns, it raises his head up, and therefore it gives him a different focus and a different understanding and a deeper meaning to what's going on. Just so that we should be able to have a certain perspective of the kind of lives that we live today. There's a story that I heard from Rabbi Friedman in the United States, very famous speaker. He was once at a college campus, and at the campus he was talking about the work of Chabad around the world, the Shluchim in different areas, and one of the feminist students got up and said, Rabbi, that's very nice to hear what you do and what your fellow colleagues do. I'd like to hear what your wife does. What are the women involved? And Rabbi Friedman looked at me and said to me, my wife, you wouldn't believe what she's involved in. We live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, and my wife, she's gone around the whole Minneapolis, St. Paul, and she has gathered together. She found 16 homeless children, and she built a shelter for homeless children. She directs it. And so she asked, the student asked, so what does, how many people does she have working on this? And Rabbi Friedman said that basically she has somebody coming in to clean up once or twice a week. But she basically runs it herself. She takes care of their educational needs, places them in the right schooling, she takes care of their medical needs, nutrition. She takes care of the whole, and they were very excited. Just an unbelievable feat to put together single-handedly such a shelter. And then Rabbi Friedman says to them, and would you like to know also who were the parents that threw these kids out in the street, or their kids ended up in the street? And they thought maybe he was going to talk about, statistics, research, what kind of parents does this happen to? So they say, well, Rabbi, what would you like to tell us about those parents? He says, well, I'll tell you, the parents that threw those kids out in the street were myself and my wife. So all of a sudden, as the students hear that, one of them says, one second, you mean to say then, Rabbi, that you have a family of 16 children? Is that what you mean to say? Is that what you're trying to tell us? When he asked you what your wife does, she's raising your 16 children together with you. He says, yeah, that's what I'm saying. He says, but what changed? When it was 16 homeless kids from a shelter, it was something just unbelievable. It was a career. It was self-fulfillment. It was, making it. And when all of a sudden I just switched a drop, and it's my own 16 children with my wife, and we're raising them, medically, educationally, psychologically, nutrition, you name it. All of a sudden it became, within 1 minute, it became archaic, old-fashioned, stifling, choking, strangling, and all the words you want to give. It's just, you know what changed? First of all, what changed is the values of the world changed. The world today has decided that a career, self-fulfillment, that's what makes it. And if somebody has a family value, a large family, and so on, it's old-fashioned, middle-aged, it's out. The packaging has changed because of how the values are viewed by the world. So the point that's coming out is that we can see clearly, sometimes we tend to think, when we talk about assimilation, we think in terminology of assimilation, we go to the worst level of assimilation when a person marries out of the fold. But there's another kind of assimilation that we're living through all the time. And that is that we live in a world where we can become assimilated within the values of what the world stands for. And the values of the world are changing. They change with the times. And we become affected by those values because we live within the world. Like the Rambam writes in Hilchos Deis, the Rambam writes that a person is a Medini. He lives amongst he's affected by the countries and by the environment that he lives in. That's the nature of a human being. So we get affected by the values. They seep in different kinds of ways without us even knowing. And things that the world holds in esteem becomes, in our eyes, in esteem. And things that the world puts down, eventually that becomes to us also. We can become embarrassed. We try to hide certain things because the values of the world are contrary to what the values of the old and the long years of the Jewish values that we have throughout Torah. So it's just the first number one issue. The reason why I talked about this is because when we talk about a clouded world, we have to recognize the fact also that because we live within the world, we can get affected by the values of the world that are not necessarily our values. When a person feels embarrassed to have a large family, because the values of the world are that small families are in and large families are out. When a person becomes affected by the fact that he's interested more in his career than he is in his family, because that's how the world puts it many times. They say by the opinion of haben, when you have a firstborn, so the Kohen asks the father at the Pidyon Haben at the ceremony, what do you want more, your son or the 5 sloim, the 5 coins in shkol? So the question that everyone asks is, what kind of a preposterous question is that? Who's going to say he wants the 5 coins instead of the son? And the halacha is you can't even take that choice. Halacha is you must redeem your first. It's just to bring out the mitzvah, we ask the question. But it's a funny kind of a question. But one of the real meanings behind the question is, you're becoming a father now. This is your first child. This is a question for you as parents. What's going to be important in your lives? This child to raise him, or running around after the dollars and after the money in your life and the business? Where's going to be your emphasis in life? The Kohen is asking you as you're beginning your parenting career. He's letting you know. Because we live in a world where that kind of a question is a very pertinent question today. Because we have people running around day and night. I mean, I don't have to tell you, the high-techers, the project has to get in. They don't care till what time you have to stay. It's 2, 3 in the morning. And they don't care about family life when they're dealing with people. And we as people that know what it means values, the Torah values, like for example, it says when Hashem counted the Jewish people, he didn't even count them as individuals, it says he counted them as families. And the reason why he says that God counted us in general was that we shouldn't lose our identity. When something gets counted, it becomes important. We're a minority amongst the world. So he didn't only count us as individuals, he counted as families, because in order for a person to be able to have a strong identity and a confidence and strength to be able to stand up to the different values of life, when he builds a strong family for his family, the kids grow up within that family and they feel they belong to something because they're together. And that's a kind of a value that's important to us that we're not willing to give up. And when we live in a world, we can get lost. So that's why the learning and keeping in tune to our Torah values gives us a completely different perspective, that we should be able to stay focused on those values. And I just want to show like a couple of things that we live in life that which is coming from our Torah scholars, especially the Rambam, where there's certain halachas and our attitude towards things also. There was once a fellow that I met in the old city of Jerusalem. His name was Rabbi Schemberger. He was a very, very active individual. He would bring together, he would go around during the week meeting students that came to Eretz Yisrael to tour, and he would invite them into his house for Shabbos, and then he would set them up in different yeshivas and seminars, the boys and the girls. And he used to have on a regular Shabbos table between 60 and 70 boys and girls all together on a regular basis. When I came to visit him, he was lying he was in his last weeks or months of his life. He had a chronic illness and he was in the final stages, and he cried to me and he told me that he's only able to have a minyan of people over to his house. He doesn't have the strength anymore. And then he told me that he once visited the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he went into the Rebbe asked him, what does he do? What is he involved in? What does he do for a living? And the Rebbe, he told the Rebbe that I'm involved in Kiruv Rechokim. I'm involved in getting people close that are far. So the Rebbe tells him, we don't use that kind of terminology by us in here. So he said to the Rebbe, what's the problem with the terminology? Why does the Rebbe use it? So the Rebbe says to him, because we don't really know who's close and who's far. So we don't use that kind of terminology, bringing people far closer. We don't know what that means. So he was a smart fellow, and he turns to the Rebbe and he says, so maybe if that's the case, what should I tell people when they ask me what I do for a living? What kind of terminology should I use? So the Rebbe tells him, why don't you just say that you're involved in the mitzvah of v'ahavta l'reacha kamoich, loving your fellow neighbors yourself. Keep it to that. As he told me the story, and I walked out of that. And then I said to myself, the Rebbe didn't just say that kind of a statement that we don't know really who's close and who's far to sound good. It sounds nice. The truth of the matter is, it's a Rambam. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva that Hashem doesn't weigh people by external actions, and even by his how much actions this one does compared to how much action this one does. Because the Rambam says that Hashem looks at people, he looks more internally into what's going on in their lives. He takes into account the environment that they grew up, the education that they received, the different things that they've gone through life. Sometimes an action of one individual can have much more weight to it and value than hundreds of actions of another human being, even though that the other person might be doing so many more acts, but the other person, because of his background and his environment and all the things that he's gone through his life, brings it to different value. Kil Deus Hashem, the Rambam says. Hashem is the one that knows the knowledge. He knows how to weigh our actions and everything. It's like sometimes I'll tell myself, I'll be on a plane and I'll go over to a person asking to put on film. The fellow told me, okay, he rolls up his sleeve. And I'm thinking to myself, the fellow right in front of other people is putting on film. He gets embarrassed, he gets intimidated, he can get inhibited, and look how other people are looking at him, and so on and so forth. And nevertheless, he wants to do a good deed. He doesn't have the education, he doesn't have the background, and he still gets up and will put on the film in front of you. I said, how much does God weigh such a mitzvah? It has another kind of a value than we can understand. So therefore, even when we're dealing with an individual that he might look far, in the eyes of God, might be closer because of where he's at. It's like one guy was given $10,000 to start, and the other guy was given $1,000. The $10,000, he blows 9,000 of the 10. He's walking around with $1,000. The other fellow has 900 of his 1,000 left. So the guy with the 1,000 is laughing, and you only have 900, I've got 1,000. Phil, where'd you start from? You had 10, you're down to 1. I had 1, I'm only down to 9. I'm still okay. It depends on what we were given, what our abilities were given, what we were God-given, what we were given from our education, from our environment. So when the Rebbe says that statement, we can't know who's close and who's far. So therefore, when we're talking to people and we're dealing with people, we look more eye to eye, on an even pedestal. No one's on top of each other. The Rambam is letting us know in the Hilchas Tshuva how one is supposed to look at another Jew. When we have a more of a deeper understanding, we're able to keep focused and we don't get clouded because we have that understanding. Now, I was just talking about it last night. There was a fellow that he changed yeshivas. He went to a more of a serious yeshiva to learn. And after a couple of months, he wrote into the Rebbe and he says that he's not happy with the yeshiva that he came to because he sees that there's a lot of faults and shortcomings. He's thinking of going back to the easier place, not to the more serious place. So the Rebbe writes back to him, he tells him, he says to him, that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, he's called in Chazal, our sages call Melech Zoken Uksil, an old foolish king. So the Rebbe says, he's not so foolish. Our sages also say he's an b'malachtim, he's a craftsman in his field. Our sages call him sly as a fox. He's as clever as can be. So then why is he called a old foolish king? So the Rebbe says the reason why he's called an old foolish king is because it's to what he tries to seduce us. He seduces us to foolishness. But the way he does it, his tactics and his strategy, he's very smart at it. And then the Rebbe goes on to explain to him, he says to him, you went from this easier place to this more serious place because you were looking for more of a serious commitment in your learning and everything else. That's why you went to the most serious place. He says, if the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, would come to you and tell you, what do you have to go to more of a deeper, serious place? Go back to the shallow place. It's much more easier for you. You would never listen to him because you want a serious, more of a commitment. So what does he do? He's a smart fellow. He knows that there's only, in this world, there's imperfections. Nothing is complete. So he focuses on the faults and the shortcomings. He puts the spotlights on them. And then he comes back to you and he says to you, you wanted to get more of a deeper commitment. You wanted to get more serious. Look at the faults, look at the shortcomings that there are. So he's coming to you with a very logical argument. He says, then the Rebbe says, so how can one know what's right and what's wrong? If he's coming with such a good logical argument, so how can we know what should be done and what shouldn't be done? So he says, you always have to be able to look at the conclusion of the thing. What is the conclusion of the argument? If the conclusion of the argument is more commitment, is more action, more deeds, then you know you're on the right direction. But if the conclusion is less commitment, less dedication, less deeds, if that's what the conclusion is, that not always when you're right are you really right, because the Yetzer Hara, he's able to clothe himself in a clothing of justice, a clothing of righteousness, a clothing of piety, of modesty, of humility. The bottom line is, where does it lead to? That's the most important thing. You know, many times when I was reading this letter, I said to myself, this is a letter that's important for us, this concept in our family lives. Many times I have husbands and wives, spouses that will come to me, and one is so right, but the conclusion that that rightness is leading to is that the walls are falling apart in the house. Everything is becoming destroyed. The rightness is leading to a conclusion of destruction. It's leading to a conclusion of strife. And because the person feels that they're so right, it legitimizes to them to get to the conclusion of destruction and also of strife. And the Rebbe is letting us know the clouded issue is always, to what conclusion will it lead to? That's where our focus has to be on. Not to whether we're right or we're wrong. There was once in Israel a car insurance advertisement, and it said, don't be right on the road, be smart on the road. You could say, you weren't allowed to go through that red light, but if you're not going to brake first, there's going to be an accident. So even though you're right, it's not who's right that counts when you're on the road. It's who's smart enough to know what's right. It's the conclusion. It's avoiding the destruction and the strife. And even if one isn't clothed in a clothing of righteousness and justice, it doesn't necessarily mean not always when you are right, are you right. And that's part of the clouded issues. And this is where we get to another thing in Pirkei Avos. In the Ethics of Our Father, it says that every single individual, it says not only should we be learning Torah, but it also says, Asei lecha rav, u'knei lecha chaver. Get yourself a rabbi, a mentor. Have yourself a friend. And have idonis kol adam l'kaf and judge everyone in a meritorious way. It's a person is subjective about his life. A person doesn't necessarily see things in a neutral way. There's nothing the matter with that. That's how God created us. Even our greatest sages, the Gemara tells us that they can be influenced by a personal agenda. Because that's how life is. Adam korev eitzel atzmo. A person is close to himself, and he can be blinded from the true facts because he has that subjective look, because he's personally involved. And that's why the ethics in Our Father tell us that one should have the mentor, a rov, or a mentor that he talks to, that he discusses things, that he should be able to see the things in more of a neutral light. That helps us keep our focus, that we should be going in the right path. And then there's an interesting Maral Miprag. Maral says, in the Mishnah it says, Asei lecha rav, u'knei lecha chaver, make yourself a rabbi, get yourself a friend. And then it says, Havidonis kol adam l'kaf, judge everyone favorably. There's another Mishnah that says, Asei lecha rav, get yourself a mentor, a rabbi, and istalek min hasafek, you'll walk away from doubt. That makes sense. Person has a mentor, person has somebody that he can talk to and discuss things. It helps him walk away from doubt, and he should have clarity. But what does judging a person favorably have to do with making yourself a mentor and having a friend? The Maral asked this question, and the Maral gives a very profound answer that when I saw it for the first time, I said to myself, oh, I wish when I was younger I would have seen this answer. You know what the Maral says? The Maral says, he says that when you make yourself a mentor, you have yourself a rov, you talk things over. You get yourself a friend, a close friend, that you can discuss things openly. He says, after a while, when you get to know somebody very close, there's no one perfect. And you begin to see the faults in people. You see shortcomings. He's not perfect. Sometimes what we feel is, this person can't be my mentor in life, or he's not going to be my rov. Yes, he has shortcomings, he has faults. This good friend that I have, he has certain shortcomings, he has certain faults. It's not for me. And you walk away from the mentor. You walk away from a good friend because of a number of little shortcomings that he has. He says, the Maharal says, he's got you again. It's the same Yetzer Hara that we're talking about. He knows how important it is for a person to have somebody that can be a mentor. He knows how important it is to have a good friend. It's so important that he comes to you with logical reasoning. He says, but he has this fault. He has this shortcoming. That's why the third thing it says in the Mishnah, judge a person favorably. Realize that there's imperfections in life. No one is perfect. But don't give up the great quality of having a good mentor and having a good friend, even though you know that he has some of shortcomings and faults. Because a good mentor and a good friend gives you clarity in life and helps you, guide you, and gives you direction. You know, today we talk about Pirkei Avos, have a good a role of a mentor. Today it took off in the world of coaching. You have coaching for everything today. Executive coaching and family coaching and business coaching and all kinds of coaching. What basically we're talking about when we talk about a coach is a good mentor or a good friend that goes along with you and helps you and gives you advice and helps you stay clear to be able to get where you're supposed to get to. So Chazal have given us, our sages already have given us a guideline of keeping focused, and we should have the right clarity and to be able to have guidance in life. It's the learning. It's having the values that we're supposed to have, as a Jew supposed to look into his heritage, the values that we have. And to be able to have also and the more learning that we do, the more we have a deeper understanding of what's going on. There's another thing that I would like to say, and that is that in our lives, many times as we live our lives, there are different instances that we have in our lives. We see divine providence. We see God's hand in our lives. Different times in our lives. You know, I was once traveling on a plane. I was going from New York to Israel via Zurich. And I got on this flight that was an American Airlines flight from New York to Zurich. And the plane is filling up, and I'm sitting next to the two-seater. And I'm saying to myself, the window seat was left open. The whole plane is filling. I'm saying, will God be good to me? I'll have a business class and an economy section. I'll have an empty chair next to me. I'll be able to relax more. And as I'm waiting and waiting, and it looks like it's filling, it's closing. The last moment, this lady comes running in, huffing and puffing, and she's with this paper shopping bag. She cuts up to my robe, and she says to me, Rabbi, I have the window seat. Okay, lost my business class seat, picked myself up, and she sits down in the window seat. But as she sat down, and she set herself up, I said to myself, a non-Jewish person doesn't usually say Rabbi, Sir, Mister, something like that. So I turned to her and I asked if she's Jewish. And sure enough, she's Jewish. What's your name? She tells me Mary. What's your Hebrew name? She tells me Miriam. Okay. So we start to talk. And in the conversation it comes out that she's going back for the first time after 7 years to Zurich. Her husband's a big neurosurgeon. His name is Youngstein, big neurosurgeon. Working in either Mount Sinai or the Beth Israel Hospital in Manhattan. He used to work in the Zurich Medical Center as a big neurosurgeon. They traveled all around the world. They did surgery in Saudi Arabia to the princes and the kings and to all kinds of other officials in different countries. She was working in the museum world in Manhattan, and then the tragedy of their story comes up. She says to me, it's the first time I'm going back after 7 years. My only son, when he was 12 years old in Switzerland, he was killed by a car accident. And she says, I just couldn't stay there after he was buried. I got into depression. She says to me, I live on antidepressants. They moved back to the United States. They're living in New York. She works in one of the museums, Metropolitan Museums there in Manhattan. Her husband's in this. And this is the first time she's going back to her son's gravesite after 7 years. Now we start talking, and I start to talk to her about the neshama, because it's a soul, and the soul's eternal. And even though the son passed away in a physical sense, he's still with you. And then I started to talk, and I tried to explain to her that, have you done anything to perpetuate the memory of your son? Anything positive? Something like setting up a fund. Your husband's in the medical world to try to set up something for children, for Jewish children to be helped. Or maybe you're in the museum world and you can do something. To think about some kind of a project to take upon yourself to perpetuate the memory of your son. And I was looking for some kind of an example to give to her that she should be able to understand what I'm talking about. So all of a sudden I say to myself, I want to tell you something. I have a sister that she lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And she got married. She was 19 years old when she got married, very young. And her first child was a baby girl. And after about 4 months after the baby was born, she began to sense that she's not moving around the way she would want her to move around. Well, it was her first child, so she didn't have experience, and she just sensed that the child wasn't moving well enough. So she took the child to the doctor, and the doctor started putting this little baby girl through tests. And after 2 months of tests, the doctors say to her that your daughter has some kind of a syndrome, and she's going to be a special eder all of her life. She's not going to be developed as much as anyone else. And they described to her the different difficulties she's probably going to have according to the tests that they're going through. And therefore, the doctors say, you have to start doing all kinds of, you get involved in the therapies in an earlier age, it enables the people to. Well, I tell her my sister got the news, and she went straight into bed, completely depressed from what she just heard. And she lied in bed for 2 weeks. She wasn't able to function. After 2 weeks of lying in bed, she said to herself, one day, she says, God gave me this child. If He gave me this child, I'm going to give her the best, but I can't. And God willing, I'll help her develop as much as she can. She should be able to have the best kind of a life in her position that she's in. And she got out of bed, and she started learning about education, special ed. She started learning about all the rights that children have in the country. She became an expert in special ed. She went back to university and got a degree in special ed. She ended up opening up an organization in the state of Minnesota that serves all the Jewish children that need special ed. She serves over 180 kids a year through all the Jewish schools in the state of Minnesota, especially in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And I'm telling her this story, and I say, look what my sister did. She took such a negative thing in life, and it was a catalyst that's helping so many people today. So many children that need help are getting help. So many people that are at the brink of despair have some kind of ray of hope in their lives to help their children. And I say to her, that's what I'm talking about. And as I'm talking to her, the stewardess has come over to give us our meals. And today, if you know, when you travel and you order kosher, you usually get it before everyone else. It used to be to get it at the end. Today they give it to you first. Anyone that orders a special meal. So I get my kosher meal. And this woman that I'm traveling with, she's a vegetarian. She gets her vegetarian meal. And the stewardess has put it down. And I look at my meal. And all of a sudden I just flip. On my meal, you have the big tray. And then you have the hot main dish. There's a sticker on the main tray with my name on it. And then on the hot main dish, there's a sticker with my sister's name on it. And she's not called Jane Smith. Her name is Chana Shagalau. That's a pretty uncommon name. And I'm looking at it. My sister from Minneapolis on the main dish. What is she doing on the main dish? And I'm looking at it like, and the woman next to me, this Miriam married, she notices that she says to me, Rabbi, something the matter with your food? And then I say to her, no. I was just talking to you about my sister from Minneapolis, about the special ed. I said, she's right here. This is her name. She looks at the name. I said, this is my name. I show her my name. And this is my sister. So she says to me, how is that? How is that your sister's name is here on the sticker? And I say to her, I don't know. I guess God is trying to show us that He was eavesdropping on our conversation. I mean, I don't have any other explanation. And then I start to think to myself, well, my sister has a wedding next week. She told me she's going into New York. So maybe she has a reservation, so maybe the meal. But then I look and I see, no, it says November, whichever date it was at the time. It has the date. It has the flight number. But all of a sudden, it also has the seat. And I was sitting in row 23, C or something, or B, and it says 26K. So my sister's on the flight. I pick myself up, and I walk over to 26K. And there's this young girl sitting there, an 18-year-old girl. I go over to her and I tell her, Chana Shagala? She says to me, yes. I said, do you have an aunt in Minneapolis? And she says to me, yes. Your sister. She told me, your sister. I said, who's your father? She says to me, Moishi. Oh, I said, you're the daughter of Moishi Shano. Very nice. I said, what are you doing here on the plane? She says, I'm flying to Vienna. It's Thanksgiving weekend, and I'm going in to see my friends. There's a seminar there for girls, and a lot of my friends are there. I'm going to visit. So I said, well, so you know, Chana, I got your main dish. She says to me, yeah, and I got yours. And she had mine. And I walked back to the seat, and I sat down. And I turned to the lady who was sitting next to me, and I said, I got an explanation how my sister's name ended up on the flight. I said, tell me, what are the odds for such a thing like that to happen? I probably could have won a state lottery more than to have such a thing happen. It's obvious, divinely guided, that we were talking about her as an example of somebody that could take something negative and turn it into positive. And God was letting us know, this is a good example. Take the example. This is divine providence. And what I must say is that when we have these things that happen in our lives, it's important for us to talk about them. It's important for us not to take them as coincidences, not to take them accidentally. It's important for us to recognize the hand of God, divine providence in our lives. When we see something that happens that we feel, oh, how coincidental. There's not coincidences. In Hebrew, the word for accident or coincidence is mikre. But mikre also comes, when you turn around the words, it's rak me'Hashem, only from God. There's no such thing as a coincidence. There's no such thing as an accident. Everything is coming from Him. And I'll tell you an interesting thing. The other side, as we would call it, is not so interested in us talking about divine providence and God's hand in the world. It says about Amalek, it says, Asher korcha baderech. That Chazal tells us, our sages say, korcha baderech means accidentally, coincidentally. Korcha is also from the word kar, cold, but also from the word accidental and coincidental. Amalek doesn't like when we talk too much about God in this world. He likes Him up more in the clouds. He doesn't want a God too close to our lives of every day. Because if we recognize the hand of God, if we recognize the hands of God in the different things that we live in life, then He's closer to us. And that means that He can affect us in our lives. Because He's much closer to us. So one of the ways of keeping focus is also recognizing the hand of Hashem in everything. And when we recognize the hand of Hashem in everything, this is what gives us the ability also to be able to stay more focused and have more clarity in our own lives too. And that Hashem becomes more a part of our personal lives too. I'll end off here. Have Mincha now. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Rabbi Gluckowsky will stay on.
כל כן המתסד והמתסד והחדים רבים סונן ויתרים ויתרים התירוסים המצות והמחור ויקבע גבול שדילים עליו אלא מהניסים
Bitte, ich ja,